Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life and another great article from Sasha Segan over at PC Magazine. I will leave it in the description down below so you guys can check it out in its entirety. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video because I wanted to make it very clear and better for you guys to comprehend what T-Mobile really means when they say they're going to cover 300 million people by the end of 2023 and how much work and funding actually has to go into achieving this goal. So as you can see by the title, it says triple its 5G coverage. So that's essentially what Neville said would have to happen for them to go from 210 million to 260 covered by the end of this year. They would have to triple their midband coverage. Now, that's not covering people. They actually have to triple the coverage. They have to gain square miles. They have to cover additional square miles to cover these additional people. So like I mentioned in previous videos, this is a very tedious process. It's lengthy. It's going to take time. It's going to cost a lot of money. So 260, when they cover 260 at the end of this year, they have effectively tripled their midband coverage. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and I want to make this one very clear. T-Mobile is not getting to 300 million people covered with midband on their existing grid. Ain't happening. This was never a upgrade mission. Wasn't going to happen. I've been told, and I've done my research, they need to deploy. Now listen to this. They need to deploy from now until the end of 2023. They need to deploy 75% of the new 10,000 sites to make this 300 million happen. Remember, the current grid as it stands, the way that they are getting to 310 million covered today with the extended range 5G, there's a lot of site spacing in that. Keep that in mind. There's a lot of sites that have that low band, and that low band is kicking 25, 30 miles out. You can't gain additional pops by doing that. So T-Mobile has to materially build the network to get to 300 million pops covered with midband. Midband has its limitations on range. So they have to put new sites in the ground to achieve that target. I hope that's clear now, because I still have a lot of people messaging me and they're a bit confused on this. Yes, T-Mobile needs to build material macros to get to 300 million pops covered. It's not happening by just upgrading the existing footprint. Not going to happen. That's why I still think the build out is a bit impressive. Because if they don't add sites, they don't get to 300 million covered. It's not going to happen. They can't do it on the existing grid. Why? Because the site spacing is so wide where they currently cover with low band today that they will have to put sites in between that spacing to cover some of those additional pops in the rural environment. And in some cases, even the suburban environment. The site might be, a little bit too far out of range of the suburban city where they have to bring midband closer to it, so they have to build new sites. And that is already included and funded in the current build. And that's what Sasha is also pointing out, so make sure you guys check out the article in the description down below. So that's why I think it's important for T-Mobile customers to get 5G devices, to take advantage of that newfound capacity. Once the Sprint network is decommissioned, which he said 80% of Sprint sites will be decommissioned by the middle of this year, all of that N41 spectrum is going to 5G. None of that will be left on T-Mobile's LTE network. So I think it's very important for the T-Mobile base to get 5G devices. They've already exceeded their own internal goals from what I'm being told. 40+% of the base today has a 5G capable device. And Neville Ray says that's because the bands that are in use now have been on devices for a bit longer in terms of the 5G that they're using. Whereas for comparison, AT&T is going to have to wait for more devices to get the Auction 110 DoD spectrum on board. They've already stated such. Some of the older devices that have it on board are a bit harder to get certified. Some of them can't be certified from what I'm told. So now we'll have to wait for new batches of phones to come out. The new iPhone, the S22 now has the DoD spectrum on board. So that's something that you also have to take into consideration with being a AT&T customer. Not all of the devices that are currently in use are going to be able to take advantage of AT&T's entire spectrum portfolio. Verizon is a little better off because C-band is starting to come into play and a lot more devices have C-band on board. Now, it may not have all the aggregation combos, but you will still be able to take advantage of some type of C-band. So that's good. And then, of course, with T-Mobile, that's also the same. You may not have access on your device to the standalone aggregation combos, or you may not have access to standalone aggregation, period, depending on your device. But you will have access to some form of N41 for the time being. Of course, eventually that's going to go to standalone, and then you'll just naturally have to upgrade your device. But I think T-Mobile is, slowly starting to see that happen. Upgrade cycles are coming back down. I mean, I upgrade every year. I don't know if some of you guys do. I know some of you can't upgrade every year. Some of you don't want to upgrade every year. But every 2 years is also not that bad. It shouldn't degrade your experience too bad. N41 is still going to help tremendously, especially as standalone becomes the core and it's on all of the devices. That should lift capacity off of the LTE network by default. So that's going to happen as well. So, but not to drift too far off the topic, again, triple the coverage. That's massive. So that's why T-Mobile still thinks they can keep that lead, because now they're going into uncharted territory. They really are. I got to give it to them. If they get to that guided goal of 300 million pops covered by the end of 2023, they will have put in raw material work. They have to put sites in the ground, build brand new tall sites in these rural environments to get to that goal. And I'm confident in that. I've talked to several engineers, I've talked to analysts, I've talked to other people that are very, very familiar with this. They have also told me the same. T-Mobile has to fund a plan that gets to 75% of those 10,000 new sites built out to hit that goal of the 300 million pops covered with midband in the rural environment. Again, that environment is very different. It's far and few in between. So when you put up a site, you're covering far less pops versus in the urban environment. You get midband on a certain amount of sites in the urban environment, boom, all of a sudden you cover 3 million people. That does not happen in the rural environment. In the rural environment, you might put up 2 sites and now you're covering 20,000 people. Just for, comparison, just to give you an example as to how tedious that process really is. So that's why I wanted to share this article from Sasha Segan. I will leave it in the description down below so you guys could check it out in its entirety. And that's why I wanted to make this video today, to really clarify what this build out really means and how expensive it's going to be and how tedious this process really is. So like I said, some of that will come from Sprint keep sites that are already in the ground. So T-Mobile will just have to upgrade those, modernize those, get some, depending on what they do, microwave backhaul, get some fiber out there. That's something that they also have to work on. We haven't even talked about that. So I'll finish off with that. So T-Mobile stated at the conference, the Morgan Stanley conference, that they've secured 10 gig fiber backhaul. They secured it. They got it locked in. Now, in that rural environment, that's going to look a whole lot different. There's a lot less fiber to go around out in these environments. So likely what's going to happen, if there's a site that's fiber fed, it could be fiber fed with, depending, 20, 25 gig backhaul. And then that site will feed the other sites with, that are going to be loaded with microwave backhaul. I think that's a very smart approach. I see AT&T use that a lot. I see Verizon use that a lot as well. And that's the only way it makes sense for them to deploy N41 in these environments, and then also make use of their fixed wireless product. So that's going to happen too. So T-Mobile probably already has, but they got some negotiating to do in the rural environment with getting fiber providers out there to build for them. Now, of course, what's going to help them a lot of these areas are already fiber fed for AT&T and Verizon, so there's already fiber out there. So it's going to cost them a good amount, but it's not going to be something that has to be entirely newly trenched. Fiber's already out there. They'll just have to extend it. A lot of the times, more than likely, T-Mobile is just going to co-locate on a Verizon or AT&T tower in this environment anyway. Unless it's like a new area where nobody has service, then of course T-Mobile will have to build their own sites. But other than that, they will likely make sure that part of the structure, the way they structure the grid, it'll be, based on co-locations with what's already there. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one.